This session looked at tall buildings more generally in the context of the larger city. Carol Willis from the Skyscraper Museum presented on the urban densities of several of the world's largest cities. Coining the term vertical density, Willis argued that while density often conjures negative connotations, it is actually a positive solution as the world continues to urbanize and city populations increase.
There are a lot of people, especially in New York, who understand that the term density only as a pejorative. In general parlance, in the press, in civic conversations, density means crowding. It's considered a negative condition. Likewise, new tall buildings are almost always protested for casting shadows and stealing light, for blocking views, for breaking the scale and the context of existing neighborhoods. So, in my view, there's an absolute illogic to these views about the ill effects of high density and tall buildings. In urban terms, we should understand density, and here I mean good vertical density, not as low-rise congestion and crowding, but as vitality. People flock to dense urban centers for their panoply of offerings and opportunities. People desire to live in Manhattan or in Midtown or anywhere in Manhattan or in Hong Kong's mid-levels, and they pay a very high price to do so. The same is true for office rents. Market forces define these places as successful. So what's my point? Don't think that I'm arguing for 70,000 people a square mile everywhere, or that there's a blanket prescription that we must have high density, or that, certainly not, that density will actually produce affluence. But this paper is more simply an appeal for a clearer thinking about what tall buildings and density and what they are and what we consider of them in the future. Fortunately, it's becoming clearer to people all the time that cities offer the promise of a more sustainable future. Climate change is an urgent danger, and urbanites consume less energy per capita than those who live in single-family homes in the suburbs. Municipal governments that pay attention to sustainable policies, as Mayor Daley showed us, can make cities even more energy efficient.
Adrian Smith began by presenting his firm's plans for the retrofit of the Sears, now known as Willis, Tower in Chicago, aiming to reduce its energy use. Reglazing of the facade and upgrading the outdated HVAC, elevator, and plumbing systems are some of the key components of the plan. The proposal also includes a new hotel tower to be built on the existing plaza.
This is the scheme we came up with, the hotel, adjacent to Sears Tower, which is in for planning permission now. The hotel has sky decks, it has solar hot water, it has a high-rise series of roof gardens. It has wind turbines integrated into the facade to take advantage of the wind forces that are coming from the southwest and hitting the building, and it's speeding up as they hit the corners of the building. It has a very high-performance exterior wall, possibly a double wall. It has urban gardens in the sky. It has cultural exhibits. It has physical plants that optimize and share the energy efficiency between Sears and itself, or Willis and itself.
The work done on the Willis project sparked Smith's firm to also take this subject to the larger scale of the Chicago Loop, for which he studies the potential of reducing carbon emissions through analyzing the buildings in the study area, including their use, size, current carbon emission, energy use, age, and other factors.
This area is 460 acres. It has 120 million square feet of built space in it, and its total carbon emissions today is roughly 3.9 million metric tons of CO2 per year. We did a little analysis. We did some analysis. We found out that you would need 90,000 acres of large wind turbines, 600 of them, to produce 3.12 billion metric tons. So 90,000 acres could do that. It was somewhat less in terms of photovoltaic. You could take about 40,000 acres, I believe it is, of area of photovoltaics in this area. But the actual cost of these is pretty significant. The 90,000 acres of turbines would cost you roughly $2.7 billion, and the equivalent energy, clean energy cost for all photovoltaics would cost about $24 billion. So you get a sense of the order of magnitude, how to decarbonate that central area. That's what it would take if it's just done by clean energy on the grid. Go back to this other slide for a second. What we did, though, is we started to look at the city in terms of components. And the first component in this chart, the orange component, represents how much energy could we save, how much carbon could we reduce if we did effectively the same thing we're doing to Willis Towers to every building in the study area. That would satisfy about 30 to 35% of our need. That's a huge undertaking. It's about a $6 billion undertaking.
The sustainable future of urban tall was further discussed in a panel which included Sandy Diehl of United Technologies, Richard Hanson of Mesa Development, and both previous speakers, Willis and Smith. Janice Tuckman of ENR Magazine served as moderator.
If by moving 356 people downtown, we saved 1 car per family, so we saved 356 cars, and those 356 cars drove 12,000 miles a year. That, and again, converting it into BTUs, that's several billion BTUs of gas saved per year. It seems counterintuitive to me that you keep on laying on me, a downtown developer. All you really need to do is make people move to this, I mean, if you could just get people to move to the city.
Yes. And the other thing is better mass transit.
Yeah.
What you're saying.
Get them out, get people out of their cars. But instead, I now have a 10% affordable housing requirement. I got a green roof requirement. I got a this requirement. Everything is just getting more expensive, and we're making the city a much better place, which I don't disagree with at all. But talk about low-hanging fruit. Just have people quit commuting 25 and 40 and 50 miles each way to work every day.
We all talk about sustainability, but none of us, I hadn't the slightest inkling of what it meant until we started doing the study and saw how grievous it was and how serious the consequences could be and how much power, clean power, we have to do. And this is only relating to buildings. There's another 50% that relates to transportation that I didn't even touch, which you're starting to talk
Sandy,
about.
you're nodding. I think what are you thinking?
Well, this is the dilemma of, the technology guys, in that it's great to have this big problem statement. I mean, that's always good to create tension. But I also think we need to try to stay in reality. And one of the things, as Rich says, it's about money. And there's money, big-time issues right now. But even where there is money, too often we see, people with vision that don't want to fund the vision, even today. So I think while we maintain the problem statement is huge, we also need to think as practically as we can and start working on all the things that we can work on, such as, tightening up the leaks in our buildings, trying to renovate with technology that we know exists today and has relatively quick paybacks, while we work on the bigger problem.
What we shouldn't learn is not to try to build tall. You got your building in the cycle, and someone will reap a profit from that. But the tall question, I don't think, is actually relevant to the subject of the future of urban tall, because it doesn't have to be the tallest. That was what I was trying to suggest, that size does matter, that we build very tall, but we don't build as large any longer. So I think there's a shift in these sort of tired ways that we think about the evolution of the skyscraper always rising. It really is about cycles. Things happen differently, a little bit differently each time.
How can we find a way to not talk to each other about these issues, but to get at the media, get at the mayor in really significant ways to get rid of the NIMBY problem we have in this country? My answer, my suggestion of the paper was to name it, to name vertical density as something which is good.
that urban density is urban vitality, and pose a phrase, even if it's a phrase like vertical density, to take the pejorative out of it that we've heard in the audience.
Calling it the vitality index. You see,
it's fine with me, but
something snappy.
But to me, horizontal density is congestion and crowding, and that's what density means to people. So maybe I don't care if you brand it with another word. I'm not invested in the word. I'm invested in the concept.
Right.
Is there anything else that we can do to create that awareness in the rest of the world?
The issue of what we design and build now is only a piece of the issue. It's statistically true that we can only replace about 1% of the existing building stock in any 1 year. And that's pretty proven out in this study that we did. Over 90% of the buildings are older than 1974. So it almost doesn't matter what we design as new structures per year. The biggest problem is all the existing structures that are out there.
Let's get Sandy in on that, because that was kind of one of your themes, too.
Yeah.
Right, no, I agree. I mean, we oftentimes spend a lot of time thinking about the big solutions, the new construction, but reality is the problem is going to be solved by improving efficiency in the existing building stock. And that's where there are solutions, there are things we can do right now to cut 10, 15% of the energy consumption. With pretty quick payback that we can fund
All right.
even out of our own pockets.